But I have to say in the beginning, I feel a bit embarrassed looking at the distinguished members around this panel, around this table, that I have been asked to open up this discussion, because I know many of you are far better qualified than I am to talk about the practical solutions and how we should move forward. I'm also extremely personally pleased to have my old friend Evgeny Velikov here on my left hand. And maybe there's a message in him and me being here together, because in the 1980s, when the Cold War was so deeply frozen that it was earth-shattering news that Reagan and Gorbachev were even talking to each other, and nobody really believed that the world could get rid of the ever-growing arms race. A few people, including myself and Evgeny Velikov, had the idea that maybe the Soviet Union should open itself up to allowing foreign scientists, including Americans, to verify the testing sites. And maybe we should try to start a journey that would ultimately end the Cold War and bring about agreements on nuclear arms reduction. And in my residence in Iceland, I have the gifts that Reagan and Gorbachev brought to Iceland in 1986 for the summit. Reagan brought a statue of the American owl, the bird of wisdom, which can see in darkness. And Gorbachev brought a clock, a very beautiful Russian clock. But I have to say, Anthony, unfortunately, it's never worked. But that's a different story. But these two artifacts in my residence often remind me that it is possible to change the world, that it was possible to overcome the enormous heavy odds of the Cold War and create within 10 years after we first met on the Reagan-Gorbachev summit, and Velikov was with Gorbachev at the Reykjavik summit. And I still remember you gave me the new report from the academy which showed that Star Wars would in fact never work. And I think when we assemble around this table to talk about climate change and the enormous challenges which we all face together, and many people arguing that it perhaps is too difficult an endeavor to achieve any success, I often take inspiration and courage from the times in the 1980s that my old friend and many others worked to end the Cold War and bring about a fundamental shift in the global scene. I was in Bangladesh 2 weeks ago and attended a conference on rising sea levels. And only a few years ago, not to say decades, it would have been almost absurd for a president of Iceland to journey to Bangladesh. It would have been a visit without a purpose, in fact. But now, the greatest security threat that Bangladesh faces is not from military invasion from Pakistan or military build-up in any of the neighboring states. The greatest security threat that Bangladesh faces comes from what's happening in my part of the world, from the melting of the ice in Iceland and Greenland and the Arctic, and the potential threat to the people and the land of Bangladesh from the rising sea levels. And for me, it was an important demonstration that we are now all in this together, and there is a burning urgency to find practical solutions that can be implemented both in the business world and in the political world. I believe very strongly that the time for talking is over, and the time for action has already started. But I am also optimistic that we will achieve great success in these endeavors in the next few years. Not only do we have to do it, but I strongly believe that we can, in fact, do it. But in order to do so, we have to create a new type of alliance between the scientific world, the business world, and the policymakers. A new type of political methodology which goes far beyond the old diplomatic traditional way of negotiating treaties over many years. Because quite frankly, we don't have the time to negotiate new treaties or extend the Kyoto Protocol or argue over the Kyoto Protocol in its new form, whatever it will take, for many years. As we all know, there is a disagreement in the scientific community how many years we have in order to prevent irreversible climate change. A certain body of the scientific community claims we have 10 to 15 years. I have already been president for 12 years, so for me, 10 to 15 years to do this is a scary statement. Those who are more conservative say we have between 20 and 30 years. But even if we take the upper limit, it's like from the 1980s, a few years before we met as activists on the Cold War, in the Cold War years, and if we are going to prevent this. I believe also that many of the technical solutions are already available. But we have to reorganize the clean energy businesses in such a way that we integrate them all. We have already proven established achievements in the field of solar and wind and geothermal and bioenergy. But they tend to be divided between different companies, different regions and countries, and we still have not yet got a single example of a comprehensive integrated clean energy system where all these elements are brought together. We have certain sections trying to create solar energy, others trying to create wind energy or geothermal. We have countries specializing, like my country, in geothermal, Denmark in wind, Spain in solar, to take three European examples. So I think the urgent task is how do we integrate the clean energy sector? And secondly, how do we convince political leaders and corporate chiefs that clean energy that doesn't threaten climate change will be available in sufficient amount? That we do not have to go in a big way for the fossil fuel or even the nuclear option. And there I think we need a much stronger activism from the scientific community and the technical community than we have had before. I know, as we all do, that there is this tradition in science that you only do the research. The policy making and the politics is for somebody else. I believe this issue is of such a nature that we need a new type of activism from the scientific community. And therefore, like those of us who are assembled here today, we need more gatherings and more discussions of this nature. Can it be done? I strongly believe so.